Hello, my name is Frances and I'm the first oboe with the Oxford Bach Soloists. I think I can probably speak for many musicians when I say that the past few months have been, among many other things, an interesting reflective journey as we try to come to terms with having our whole way of life and a part of ourselves taken away overnight. I've missed terribly the projects I had in the diary and seeing my colleagues and friends. And definitely the music I have most missed playing is Bach's. I can play the piano a bit, so I have spent lots of time with the keyboard partitas and suites, and the well-tempered clavier, but as an oboist I think Bach has a special significance. It's twofold. It's partly that his oboe music is so great because he had such great players in his group, but I've also often wondered whether there's a pattern to which instruments get given which kind of obligatos in the cantatas and masses, and it does seem that the oboes very often get the deep and meaningful serious ones, the ones that touch on the very essence of things. For example, the ones in Cantata 8, Cantata 82, 159, if you know your cantata numbers. We have all been forced this year to spend a lot of time at home, either on our own or with our families, and there have of course been many wonderful things about that. But life has seemed to me lately to be a lot about the domestic and the day-to-day. Hopefully things are now beginning to open up again, but for all this time the opportunity to be in sacred spaces, big or small, and hear live music about big subjects has been sadly absent. In the hope that we will all be together playing again at some point in the not too distant future, and also to keep myself vaguely in shape, I've gone back and looked at some of my favourite obbligati, and I thought perhaps I could share a few thoughts about them and about my instruments from here in our music room. The situation for Bach in Leipzig had two big influences on the music he wrote for oboes there. First of all, he had two really great oboists to work with, called Caspar Gleditsch and Gottfried Kornagel. Gleditsch was employed by the city at a more senior rank than Kornagel, who was on a lower salary, but given that many of Bach's solos are for two oboes and the parts are equally difficult, both players must have been exceptional. They were both expected to switch between three different kinds of oboe: the normal treble one, and then the oboe d'amore and the oboe da caccia. These latter two had come about because of the second big influence in Leipzig's musical scene. There were some very talented instrument makers there, such as Bauer and Eichentopf, who, unusually for that time, didn't have to belong to a guild, and so therefore were much freer to experiment and be creative with their designs. My oboes are all copies of German oboes from the 1720s, exactly the time that Bach was working on his cantata cycles in Leipzig. Original oboes do survive, but the constant changes in humidity when playing a wind instrument mean that they don't last forever, and the old ones wouldn't actually cope with being used on a daily basis now. One of my favourite solos for the oboe alone is the qui tollis from the Lutheran Mass in F major, which was put together in the early 1730s from existing cantata movements. This particular solo comes from Cantata 102. The words of this bit of the Mass are, "He who takes away the sins of the world, have mercy on us. He who takes away the sins of the world, receive our prayer. He who sits at the right hand of the Father, have mercy on us." I think there is a tension in the oboe part between the weight of the sin and the longing to be freed and to be released upwards, and so the oboe line rises and falls again and again over the whole range of the instrument. For me, because the expressive element in movements like this is paramount, I practice playing through the whole movement as often as possible by myself to make sure that stamina won't be a problem and that the audience will hopefully not notice too much that it's actually very tiring. That way, you also practice what you will do in the rests and where and how much you're going to breathe. It might seem an obvious thing to say, but the obbligato instrument is of course always responsible for setting up the singer and the text, for sort of creating the little world of the aria. So it's really important to be very assured about the opening. This movement follows on with no break from the one before, where the oboe has been tacit. So you go over it lots of times at home, practicing coming in cold and making that opening rising sixth really tell. Personally, I always find it very useful to know in advance who the singer and other players will be, because you might know from before whether a particular singer likes things generally faster or slower, and how strong their voice is. It's one of the nice things about OBS, that the instrumental team especially is pretty consistent. But it's often helpful to prepare a sort of blank canvas version, where you're ready for a few different tempo possibilities, and to maybe adapt your sound to different voices. Bach wrote as many solos for the oboe d'amore as he did for the oboe. It's a bit of an oddity. It was most likely developed in Leipzig, and it was very popular there. And it was used in the rest of Germany too, but not in the rest of Europe, for about 40 years. Telemann also really liked it, and wrote quite a few pieces which use it very effectively. But it then basically vanished, apart from the solo that Ravel wrote for it in his Bolero in 1928. Telemann's pieces are not played very much these days, but because Bach uses it in his passions and masses and cantatas, and they are a core part of the repertoire we play now, we all have one. It has a darker, mellower sound than the oboe, because its tone holes are positioned lower down the instrument. But it's also very useful because it's in A, and so in keys like A major and F sharp minor, you just play transposed parts in C major or A minor, and it's easy. I really like this aria for tenor and oboe d'amore from Cantata 8, Was willst, dich, mein Geist, entsetzen. Like the previous one, it's also pretty tiring, so it's good to be well prepared, and it's different to that oboe one just now, in that you've just played a long chorus before it, so it's good because you don't have to come in cold, but on the other hand, you are quite out of puff, and you do have to take the lead all alone over a very delicate and quiet pizzicato bass. I would always practice playing the whole chorus part through by myself, and then the aria straight away afterwards, so that I can feel exactly what it will be like. This aria is about the fear that a soul will have when the bell for its final hour tolls, and how a body each day draws closer to the earth, where it will be at peace with so many thousands of others. Both the fear and a kind of joyful serenity are present here, I think, as though the person is confident deep down that the end will be beautiful and will draw them closer to God. There is the same opening rising sixth as in the qui tollis we just heard, but decorated this time, just in the same way as in Erbarme dich or Ich habe genug from Cantata 82. And also, just like in the qui tollis, the lines pull alternately upwards to heaven and downwards to earth. The word painting goes even further this time, with the pizzicato bass deliberately sounding like the tolling bell, and a very distinctive bit in the tenor part that has the same effect on the word schlägt, or tolls, which comes towards the end of this little extract. When the words of that aria talk about the earth being a place of rest, both the voice and the oboe in turn fall right down and hold very still. I think the d'amore is probably used here so that the oboe can play in E minor with just one sharp, rather than C sharp minor, which has four. But even so, actually, it's not that easy a key, because you need C and D sharps, and it's slightly awkward to move between these two keys. You need C sharp with this one, and D sharp with this one, and you have to jump between them. Modern oboes actually have extra keys added to make that much easier. Here's the closing ritornello of the aria. The oboe da caccia is like the oboe d'amore in that it was developed in Leipzig and used exclusively in Germany, but not anywhere else in Europe. Bach uses it in both of his passions and in several cantatas, and I always feel when I'm playing it a bit like I'm with a rare animal at the zoo who has lots of curious visitors. It's a tenor oboe in F, and it certainly is unusual looking. The curve is achieved by making lots of little cuts along the length of the wood and then bending it very carefully over a heat source. And then it's covered in black leather to seal it and to make it look tidy. And mine has a brass bell with some beautiful shell decorations copied directly from Eichentopf. And I don't know if you can also see, but some tiny little flowers around the rim. The curve actually makes it easier to play than a straight tenor oboe, even though it looks so awkward, because it means that the tone holes are closer together and so they're easier for fingers to reach. It does have a remarkable sound that's both strong and soft, and it's often scored together with flutes or recorders. It does often express grief, especially in the arias in the Passions, so in Aus Liebe, for example, from the Matthew Passion. From the John Passion, which are both with flute. But here I've chosen the aria from Cantata 1, How Brightly Shines the Morning Star, where I think it's another one of what I see as a distinct category of Bach's oboe arias, ones about joy. They're often with soprano, which part would have been sung by a boy, of course, or soprano and bass duet, and they're unashamedly and wholeheartedly delighted and delightful. Other examples, if you're interested, are the ones from the Wedding Cantata 202 or Cantata 79, or the duets in Back It Off Cantata 140, or the Christmas Oratorio Part 3. The text of this aria is, Heavenly divine flames, fill the faithful breasts that long for you. Souls feel the strongest drive of the most burning love and taste heavenly desire on earth. There is no concession made at all for the fact that the caccia is bigger or potentially more difficult to play in terms of the number of notes written in this piece for it. It can be difficult sometimes switching between instruments, between movements, and immediately making the adjustments to the spacing between your fingers. Here's a section from the middle of the aria. Thank you for joining me today. Please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to be notified of our next Back to Bach episode. And please click the link in the description to donate. All donations go straight to us, the musicians, making a material difference to us. I'm sure that you have really missed hearing the other voices in these pieces, just like I have, but I very much hope that we will be playing and listening together again to the full versions very soon. Thank you.